Elon Musk announced that SpaceX is building a self-growing city on the moon. It is a striking phrase, but what does it actually mean? Because once you look at it carefully, self-growing either means roughly the same as self-sufficient, or it is more vague and weaker. And that distinction matters more than it seems.
We're talking about the term self-growing because Elon Musk has used that in his announcement that he's going to build a self-growing lunar settlement to build the stuff for his orbital data centers. And so we're going to talk about what does self-growing mean?
And how do we put it into perspective with the terms that have been used for space settlements forever, sort of like self-sufficient and like a closed ecological life support systems is a very common
Right.
term.
Right.
So
And then that's
closed
only
system,
for what's that?
a closed system. It doesn't need to be. It needs. You could use the term closed system as a wider concept than just the life support.
Right. Right. But anything that's growing can't be a closed system. Like it's going to need some kind of resource input, right? Either typically when we talk about self-sufficiency or self-reliance for a settlement, it's that they have the capability to extract the resources they need from the local environment, process them into something that's usable, and then use that material to keep themselves alive and grow their settlement, grow their capability, grow their size. That's kind of what the traditional self-sufficient is. Uh, Self-growing in my book is a little vague. It could mean that, or
Yeah.
it could mean that the settlement has the capability to take material from Earth and use that to grow its capability and its size. Because it's self-growing. They are growing. They're just not necessarily extracting the materials themselves. And that would be opposed to a settlement where you're shipping all your habitats directly from Earth and you're just building it out by attaching cans to each other or whatever, inflatables or whatever. That's kind of the way I see it. Self-growing is kind of a bigger spectrum than self-sufficient.
I see self as the key part of self-growing here, and I wouldn't consider fish in the aquarium to be self-sufficient just because they can take the fish food that you drop into the tank and make new fish. That's not they are not independent in any way. That's not self-growing, even though they can take whatever resources they are given and make more fish from that. So I don't think being able to use resources that are fed into a self-growing city would count as the city being self-growing. I think you need to include the capability of obtaining those resources. Could possibly be via trade, so that you have something that you produce that you then trade with somebody else in order to grow.
I mean, I can see what you're saying about that. But it's open to interpretation, right? Which is why I'm less thrilled with the term self-growing when we already have a good term, self-sufficient, that kind of defines what we're shooting for anyway. You said before, it is kind of a more positive spin on things. It's self-growing.
I think that is important, and it's probably why he chose it, because it feels like then that means that humanity is growing through this city. This city is
Yeah.
only talking about one city on the moon that's being built, and that is then a very positive thing. I would prefer to have more than one self-growing unit outside Earth. So I would rather have a bunch of a number of self-growing towns than a big self-growing cities. And then those towns could have some kind of specialization and trade with each other. That's fine. But they could also conceivably be completely independent ideologically and politically.
Well, as we've talked about before, for self-sufficient, to be self-sufficient, the towns need to be able to survive on their own without trade.
Yep.
Right. So even towns on the moon, if they need that trade to continue to breathe, they're not really completely self-sufficient. So, yeah,
I wouldn't want my town to not be able to produce oxygen and water. No.
that's the whole encompassing of not just oxygen and water, but the equipment needed, the power needed, everything needed to keep everything habitable.
Yeah, well, you had the definition last ramble that it's fine to have a stockpile. Then resupplying that stockpile from the moon would be better than supplying it from Earth. And having towns being essentially self-sufficient apart from the stockpile and then trading for resupply of the things that some other town is specialized in producing. That would be a more stable moon society than everybody stockpiling chips from Earth.
True, true. But I think self-sufficient by definition isn't a infinite status. You can't say we've reached self-sufficiency and that's the way it is forever, right? So if you had a stockpile of widgets, you can say we're self-sufficient in widgets for 5 years. Okay, you're self-sufficient for 5 years. After 5 years, your supply will be gone, and then you'll either have to have figured out how to make more widgets locally or import more widgets, and then then you're self-sufficient for another 5 years. So I don't think
Mm,
self-sufficient is an end goal. It's a transient state of being that is constantly in flux.
yeah, but there you included a certain amount of trade. So I would argue that it's better to have the trade as local as possible
Sure,
rather than importing it at very high energy cost from far away.
sure. And if that's possible, that's great. But most places on the moon have pretty much the same suite of materials as other places, right? If you're in the Mare, you're not going to be trading iron or basalt with other Mare settlements because they're going to have plenty of their own. Now, you can
Yeah,
trade that with highland settlements for aluminum and titanium because they're going to have a higher concentration than you are in the Mare. And, if you're at a PSR, then you can trade volatiles for stuff that you don't have access to. So, yeah, that kind of stuff may be local trading. But I see eventually if there was a number of settlements on the moon, they would all specialize in something. And it won't necessarily be resource trading, it'll be finished product trading.
yeah.
So, agricultural products might be traded because they're growing bananas and you're growing coconuts or whatever. Crafts, finished manufactured products. Some settlements may have the capability to do one thing, others do the other, so they'll trade.
Could also be resources, but not through being unique, but to have technology to extract it. There is hydrogen and nitrogen in the regolith as well, dry regolith, especially in the finer aggregates, because it comes in with the solar wind. And then if you have a better refinement method for that particular element, then you can extract and trade that. It's the same thing with electronics. I do think that for life support and control purposes that are essential, you can get by without the most modern chips that are available on Earth today. You can go back 50 years essentially and use that kind of computer, and that you can manufacture with much less equipment.
Sure. True. But any kind of local lunar trade is going to have to compete with imports from Earth, right? So if you've got a settlement that's out there mining hydrogen from the regolith and they have to move a lot of regolith to extract a reasonable amount of hydrogen versus somebody having a shipment of ammonia coming in from Earth, it's all about economics. My 80 tons of ammonia versus how many, equals, how many tons of hydrogen versus how much regolith do you have to move and process to get the same amount of hydrogen. Got to figure out the cost benefits of those.
Yes, as long as everything is about the economy,
It always ends up being that way, though, right? That's the way humans are going to work. If I'm in settlement A and I need hydrogen and nitrogen, I can buy it from Earth as a shipment for a certain cost, or I can buy it from settlement B out there mining the PSRs for a certain cost, and I'm going to go with whatever makes the most sense.
assuming you have something that is worthwhile shipping to Earth, because you won't have any dollars because they don't grow on the moon.
Well, no, no, but we've talked about this before. Most money that's going to be earned from lunar activities is going to be digital. It's going to be content, research, whatever. It's going to be something that nobody's shipping anything back to Earth except for trinkets just to sell as souvenirs. There's no bulk material found yet that warrants shipping anything back to Earth except for rocket fuel. And if that's only if it's like aluminum oxide.
It's for launching, essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Shipping rocket fuel to Earth is not economical, but for launching stuff from the moon, if you want to launch stuff from the moon, such as AI satellites for that matter,
Well,
then rocket fuel, yes.
well, he's going to use a mass driver for that. So,
Fair
but
enough.
if you have a cislunar transportation system, right, and you have rockets leaving Earth orbit going to the moon, they need fuel.
Yep.
And the best way to do that would be to use lunar fuel, so you're not lifting that from the Earth. So you do need to send aluminum oxide, whatever you're using, lunar produced fuels, hopefully not hydrogen from the PSRs, because that seems like a huge waste.
Yes, that would kill the lunar colony pretty fast.
It would be hard to keep one going without that. But well,
Yes.
the point is that is about the only thing that makes sense would be to ship fuel from the moon using common resources, especially the oxygen.
Yeah, well, any satellite parts as well. I mean, even if not AI itself, I mean, it could be the satellite structures,
Well, yeah, yeah, but then you're getting into a
solar
bigger,
panels.
yeah, you're getting into a bigger thing, right? Like right
Yeah,
now, the only thing that would make sense would be fuel. But yes, if you needed to build anything in orbit, yeah, your structural components are going to come from the moon. Your solar panels are going to come from the moon. As much as you could get would come from the moon, and that would require a much bigger transportation infrastructure.
yes. Then again, as you said, a mass driver or possibly space elevator, lunar elevator going up
Mhm.
to L1
I think
or
that is a better long-term solution than a mass driver, personally, but we will see. If we're building a cislunar civilization, there's going to be all kinds of structures in orbit, various orbits.
yeah, maybe.
I don't know. We've moved off topic from self-growing.
We did. That was the trajectory.
Yeah. So let's get it back on course
Yeah.
with
Self.
self-growing.
What self do we want? No, we don't want self. We want, yeah, you want self-sufficiency rather than self-growth. I think I'm more attracted of a colony that is inherently growing than one that is just self-sustaining at the stationary point.
Well, why
Thus,
though?
self-growing sounds better to me.
But I think that in itself is a fallacy because most settlements are going to hit a point where they're not going to grow anymore. Otherwise, they're just going to be like a cancer or, an algae bloom where they just keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And I think that, especially because it's not like on Earth, right, where basic life support is provided for you. Every time you expand a lunar settlement, it's gonna take resources. You're gonna have to plan that out as to what you're gonna grow, why you're doing it, because it's all gonna take resources and
From what?
time.
And it's not going to take somebody's resources. It's going to utilize the lunar crust, essentially.
No, what I'm saying is it's still resources, right? If your
Yeah.
settlement only produces X amount of iron a month, you got to figure out what you're going to do with that, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever material. But I'm just saying, if you're not bringing in stuff from Earth, then you're limited by what you can process
Yeah.
and create.
So, so in order to be self-growing, you need to be able to process more than you actually use so that you can use part of what you're producing for growing.
My point is that self-growing, a lot like self-sufficiency, I think is a non-permanent thing. A settlement could be self-growing at one point and then not self-growing. It can be self-sufficient for a certain amount of time and then not. It's not an end game where it now has reached this status and then it is done. It's a more of a snapshot. What is the settlement doing now?
Yeah, I kind of think that either you grow or you shrink, that you maintain exactly the same size. It's just a special case in between. It is not really interesting.
Oh, I think for off-planet settlements, that's going to be the norm. I mean, if you're not actively building more habitation, more habitats, more infrastructure to sustain those habitats, if you're not actively building more capability, then you can be at that level and keep it at that level. You don't have
Yeah,
to
but
shrink. You could just, you're done. Our
but
our our settlement can house 1,000 people, and that's where we like it to be. Boom.
but how do the new people, you see the moving of people between Earth and the self-sufficient cities is what balances the population, or do you think that the town will automatically adapt the nativity so that it exactly fits in the 1,000 rooms that
I have
it
no
has?
idea. I'm hoping that we have so many settlements out there that there'll be all kinds of varieties. But my point is that infinite, constantly self-growing is probably not a realistic term. Even if the settlement wants to grow constantly, it'll be in it'll be in bursts. We're going to build more habitation. Fine. We're going to build all the infrastructure for that. Fine. And then okay, now it's available and now we've grown some. And now we're going to work on the next phase of growth. So it's going to come in spurts. It's not going to be we're just constantly self-growing. It's like we're going to grow a little bit and then we got to recover and then we're going to grow a little bit more and then we got to recover.
No, I have a different view on that. I think that what will happen is that it will be self-sufficient, as in it can replace everything in the town or city, for that matter, if it becomes big. And being able to replace anything, that means that if there is more room needed, you just expand because you can build everything that's needed for expansion by definition of self-sufficient in my mind. So
Yeah, I mean,
for me, self-sufficient and self-growing is essentially a matter of perspective. Self-sufficient mean you can repair or construct or replace everything you have in the town, while self-growing is that you can also build a little bit more. But if you can replace everything, then you can also build a little bit more because you need some safety margin.
Yeah, but I mean that falls under self-sufficient too, right? If
Yep.
you can build replacements, then you can build a little bit more to expand.
Yeah, so you can
So,
grow. So self-growing and self-sufficient is the same thing to me. Self-growing
so
is it's a matter of perspective. Self-growing looks a bit more forward, and we're going to expand, and there are going to be more humans outside Earth, rather than self-sufficient is more McMurdo base could be made self-sufficient, and then but they won't grow because there is nothing there. Well, actually, it's a pretty good place to be. There's plenty of ice, but
there is. If you're looking for ice, that's a good place.
yes,
Yeah,
there's ice and rock. It's and the ice is more accessible than on the moon. So yeah,
that's
we
true.
if a settlement can replace everything it already has, it can, by definition, build a little bit more. Which means self-growing and self-sufficiency may simply be the same idea, described from different angles.